Hey Lexi, I just want to let you know I'm starting to admit some people in. You should see them once they start to be accepted.
Ready? I wish I had a gavel, but here we go. Hi everyone, I call this Wednesday, May 27th meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. Just for the sake of time, Secretary will be taking a screenshot of all the names and we'll be getting the attendance that way. So we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. Are there any motions? If so, like I always repeat, please raise your hand in the participants tab and I will recognize you. All right, Joshua Reynolds.
Motion to add or reconsider policy 415 under line item 10C.
All right, is there a second? And as always, the way that I'm going to do this is take general consensus. So if there is anyone that disagrees with this or has discussion on this, please raise your hand. By seeing no one raise their hand, oh, Representative Reynolds.
Thank you. Just to clarify, the reason I put forth this to reconsider is because there were no objections to it the last time. We just did not have enough people present and a few people abstained. And so I do believe that this does not set the bad precedent of bringing up old legislation again and again. I think that there was no opposition and it was merely due to technical difficulties, which we were not able to have a full vote. So thank you.
Thank you. I will also agree with Representative Tierney in having it under line item D, just so that we have all the confirmations first, as well as swearing ins. Representative Reynolds, is that okay with you?
Yes, after the swearing in. Sorry, I wasn't sure whether to say after or under C or under D. Thank you.
No, you're all good. All right, so that will be under line item D. All right, are there any other motions for the adoption of the agenda? All right, and before I continue, I just wanted to point this out as well before Open Student Forum. But if there was anyone who had a concern or had anything to say about the Zoom bombing that happened 2 weeks ago, feel free to bring that up in Open Student Forum or for comments of the good of the order. And just another reminder, this meeting is being recorded for the sake of meeting minutes, just so that our secretary can go back and get accurate minutes. If anyone has a problem with that, please message me individually and we can definitely stop if it's something that you, if that's something that you are against. But going forward, we'll now have adoption of the meeting minutes. There's no discussion on that. We'll move forward. Okay. And then we'll move into Open Student Forum. If you are here and you have something to say for Open Student Forum, please raise your hand in the participants tab so I can recognize you. All right. Seeing none, I will now move on to a report by the President, President McKay.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're all doing well and staying healthy. We'll just jump right into it today. Thank you for all joining us. You're all muted, so it's a little easier than usual. But I'd like to ask that to kind of begin today's assembly, we all take a brief moment of silence and prayer for George Floyd, for Ahmaud Arbery, and frankly, for all those who in our nation's long history have lost their lives due to senseless and race-related killing. That one person in this country in this year could fear for their life based on the color of their skin should be of grave concern to every person in this country. I ask that further, you all join me in a second moment of silence, and keep in heart, close to your heart, those over 100,000 people in our country who have now lost their lives due to COVID-19 related illnesses. May they all rest in peace. Thank you. Some business. Over the last week or two now, I've been working with Director Van Horn of the Department of Sustainability to interview and onboard a total of 4, moving on to 5 different coordinators in the Department of Sustainability. Director Van Horn has had applications up for some time, and I think, as she might explain later on in her own report, these are some of the most talented students in what the coordinators are designed to do that I've ever met at Penn State, and I couldn't be more excited to have them join the UPUA and share those talents with us and with all of you. Over the last weekend, Chief Justice Shookman and I interviewed a total of 5 students for the Judicial Board Associate Justice role, which, as I described in the statement that I put out, I think it was last week, we decided to appoint just one more justice over the summer in response to a representative's concern raised last assembly about the fairness and equity of keeping a rolling application open. And if you think about it, he wasn't entirely incorrect. All 5 students had applied and all 5 were incredibly qualified. Frankly, I would have had very little problem appointing them all to the board. However, we would have been disproportionately affecting, or rather, COVID-19 and its technological concerns, as well as the fact that many students might not be in the United States and might not have access to the website, whatever it might be, have disproportionate access to those applications. And so by appointing one more justice, we'll ensure that every justice has a vote on the board throughout the summer months, as there are now an odd number of justices, and that the 4 that are still open can be filled within or by the end of the first week of the fall semester. In doing so, will allow all of those students a fair and equitable chance to apply. All of the students who were not appointed this time around have been invited to keep their application on file, should they so like, and then they will be invited back for another interview in the fall, regardless of whatever that candidate pool might grow to look like. I'd be happy to take any questions on that at the end as well. I also met up with Representative Robertson to talk about a possible policy change to ensure that that equitable system is solidified moving forward, but we can always discuss some other ways to go about that as well. There should be more coming from, I suppose, the 2 of us soon, and if anybody else is interested in those conversations, please reach out to either him or I. Thank you. The Student Fee Board met this past Friday. What did we do? We elected Representative Mishler to the steering committee. Congratulations to Representative Mishler. And we also elected Director Van Horn to the secretarial role. That was it. There were no considerations to give during the board itself. The Food and Housing Security Task Force met for its now second to last time this past Monday. Trustee Culler, myself, Vice President Pathical, and the GPSA leadership also took a call, as did Representative Jordan, to talk about an idea which had come up very similar to the University of Maryland's meal voucher program, which would essentially relate in one way or another to ensuring that students who might have financial strains and might not be able to afford meals have some kind of an outlet in which a voucher exists to help them out, at least in the short term. So we have more meetings coming up to discuss that and what that partnership between the UPUA and the GPSA looks like moving forward. President Pathical and I also took part in Daily Collegians Unfiltered this past Tuesday. That was exciting. Student Leader Roundtable met this past Wednesday. This was a good time for basically just ensuring connections and a good communication was put in place. I created a GroupMe so all of the student leaders can raise concerns throughout the year. So if you're ever looking to collaborate or interested in whether or not one organization might want to help with a project that a representative wants to take up, feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to make the connection for you and put you in touch with that president or designee. The UPUA and CCSG leadership met this past Thursday. We talked a little bit about policy and platforms, but spent a good deal of the time just really getting to know each other and solidifying a strong relationship moving forward. I'm really excited to see all of their platform initiatives, and they were very excited to see all of ours. I'm sure that as an organization, UPUA will be able to help CCSG very significantly, as will the CCSG be able to help our students here at University Park. So I'm incredibly excited to be on board with them. On Friday, Lexi and I met with the Vice Provost for planning to talk about the strategic plan and a little bit as to how we can incorporate things like sexual assault misconduct prevention and really integrate it into the strategic plan. Really starting to change the rhetoric from, oh, we can't talk about our problems and, oh, Penn State is so great. It is great, but we need to be able to address the problems head on if we're ever going to strategically plan to better them moving forward. He was very on board with a lot of our ideas, so excited to continue those conversations. Yesterday, Speaker Zong and I met up briefly to discuss platform initiatives as well. I'll say briefly, I did, our conversation yielded many positive results. I will say that I think I, in many cases, may have miscommunicated with some of the chairs as to the McKay Pathical platform. As Lexi and I discussed quite extensively on the campaign trail, there's always been this huge executive overreach into the legislative by essentially just having the representatives do the work that the executive platform was elected to do themselves. Essentially, that's not what we're looking to do. And so we have a meeting coming up with the chairs to talk about how we can kind of ensure that the work which Lexi and I are already doing to carry our own weight can line up with representatives, and so that representatives aren't being assigned to initiatives which, for example, might only require an email to be sent or something like that. Just ensuring that that communication line is solidified moving forward. If anybody's interested in a specific McKay Pathical platform, feel free to reach out to obviously your chairs who might have been discussing them already, as well as Lexi and I. We'd be more than happy to sit down and figure out some ways to collaborate. I was recently actually invited to AAC as well as some of the other committees. I believe I'll be attending Justice and Equity. I'd be happy to take any questions there as well. And then lastly, I've been working with the executive team. I say the executive team, really essentially steering to plan a retreat this upcoming Saturday. Specifically, Chief Justice Rachel Tormansky has been working extensively on the itinerary, and we've solidified everything with with Speaker Song moving forward. So it'll essentially be more of an onboarding opportunity, really focusing on parliamentary procedure, how the committees work, the structure of the executive branch, which I know we'll go over today, but the structure of the organization as an entirety. And we'll also be taking a bit of time to get to know each other, utilizing Chief of Staff Tormansky's slideshow, which was sent out at the very beginning of the assembly, and will allow everybody to kind of talk about themselves, show some of their pictures if they want, their contact information. Everybody will get a little chance to present about themselves so that we can all get to know you. So if you haven't filled out that slideshow, please do so at your earliest convenience. Very last thing is that the website is still being kind of updated. We're working on putting in a translation plugin, which will allow the website to be translated in many different languages, just figuring out one or two kinks there. And then we also have a, the budget has been uploaded to the website. If you go to the website and then about, you can find the budget, which is now accessible to the public at any moment that you should so like, so that we are being as transparent as possible. I believe that's all I have. I'd be happy to stand for any questions. Thank you all very much.
Are there any questions for President McKay? Representative Bose?
Erin Bose at large. Hello. I have a quick question regarding you talking about like the McKay Pathical platform and like the executive branch tackling initiatives. How exactly do you manage to? How do you plan to balance doing those initiatives and making sure that the chairs are also involved, and also taking into account that it is a constitutional charge for the General Assembly and the legislative branch to work on the executive platform. So exactly how do you plan on tackling that?
Right. So the constitutional charge is for the speaker to work with the president and the vice president to figure out goals and tasks of the committees, but not necessarily to carry out the exact executive platform. But rather, we need to figure out a good way to communicate which initiatives that Lexi and I ran on, such as the POW MIA Chair of Honor, really can't be assigned to many people because it's literally as simple as sending an email. The last thing that I would want to see is that representatives are put on assignments which essentially have no work for them to do because they are things which only the executive can do. Too often the executive branch has failed to carry its own weight. And frankly, the executive ticket was elected to complete the executive platform in conjunction, of course, with the legislative branch. And so we do look forward to working with you to figure out exactly where we can collaborate best, but not just assigning perhaps everything out to all of the representatives. I really want to ensure that representatives have their own chance to hear from their constituents and bring up their own ideas, which they themselves ran on.
Are there any other questions for President McKay? Representative Tierney. Ooh, you went away for a sec. There you go.
Hi, everyone. Tim Tierney at large. This is more of a point of information rather than a question, but the University of Minnesota student body president put out an open letter and a petition to try and get their university police force to completely disassociate with the Minneapolis Police Department. And I was, just because of your comments about George Floyd, I was wondering if you would be willing to maybe sign that and promote it through either UPUA or potentially ABTS channels.
Yes, so it has been promoted through ABTS channels. I've received it actually just via email a few minutes ago. I do plan on signing on. I would be more than happy to share it through UPUA's channels as well. To be frank, I've been working with Representative Tolliver, the Black Caucus representative, as well as Representative Rodriguez of the Justice and Equity Committee to actually finalize our own statement. We had been working on one with regard to Ahmaud Arbery, but see that it's fitting that we do incorporate in one way or another Mr. Floyd's recent killing in Minneapolis. I think it would be of bad taste not to encompass that as well.
Are there any other questions for President McKay?
I just have one more brief thing to say with regard to discussion on the floor. It's come to my attention that in the last few weeks and possibly since the beginning of the General Assembly, some representatives have not necessarily always felt welcome by their fellow representatives based on the rhetoric which we've been using. Quite obviously, I have literally no control over what you do say, but I do ask that you really do take some time to consider how you're saying different things and how it might, in short, make representatives feel, especially to those who are being addressed. We want to make sure that we want to ensure that we are creating a collaborative environment which encourages civil discourse, but which is still respectful and mindful of that fact which all of us deserve to be treated with fairness and dignity. So I do ask that that is continued throughout the remainder of the Assembly. Thank you.
All right, and with that, are there any other questions for President McKay? Representative Mishler, or Chair Mishler.
Adelaide Mishler at large. I was just wondering if President McKay could maybe like cite some examples or just generally kind of speak on language like or behavior, just so we can more adamantly be proactively addressing these things and have a more clear understanding if he is so comfortable or if that is relevant or effective.
I would say perhaps in maybe the types and extent to which candidates or nominations may be questioned. I believe it's important to give obviously thorough insight and thorough questioning, but it's been seen by representatives who have gone through that process, that it is not necessarily the most respectful way to go about it. It's just been something which representatives have shared with me before, and which I feel like it's my duty to share with all of you and encourage that we just be mindful of how we're saying, different things, especially when it comes to situations where representatives have gone out of their way to make themselves perhaps candidates and things like that.
Are there any other questions for President McKay? All right, seeing none, we'll now move on to my report. Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a great summer, obviously staying safe and having as much fun as you possibly can and just staying active. I know this is not the ideal situation for all of us, but at the same time, we do represent UPUA, so always be safe, be careful, and just make sure that you're keeping yourself safe in this time, just because it is very unprecedented. I've said that word a million times, but it really is. But on to my report. I sit on the Food Security Subcommittee for the Housing and Food Security Task Force. We've had a couple of meetings, and the final report is due, I believe, in the beginning of June. My subcommittee has about 2 more meetings left. I was teamed with the president of Lions Pantry, Spencer Wallace, to research kind of the different food apps that can be accessible for students. For example, if we have an event and we have extra food, if there is an app that kind of caters to that need. Just writing a report on that and having that in the overall report is super important. But yeah, that's going to be going on in the next couple of weeks. If there are any questions about the task force or anything at all, feel free to reach out to me. Other than the things that Zach mentioned with Student Fee Board, Student Leader Roundtable, the other thing is the CARES Act funding has been distributed to those who qualified for Title IV eligibility, as well as Pell Grant recipients. I know a lot of questions were fielded for the application. I'm very close to Peggy Laura, who is actually one of the people who led the task force. So if you have any like urgent questions, or there aren't any questions answered on the website that talks about the CARES funding, please feel free to reach out. I've been actually in close contact with Black Caucus Representative Tolliver. He's been sending me many questions that Black Caucus have been sending him, or the Black community have been sending me him at Penn State. So again, feel free to text me, message me in any way. I'm always a resource to you guys. Going forward, because the university will be announcing the state of the fall semester on June 15th, I've decided to wait until June 15th to set up a list for special presentations in the fall. I feel more comfortable having a more solid ground to base that off of. And again, I'm going to reiterate, if there's anyone at University Park or faculty, staff, anyone that you think would be an amazing special presenter for UPUA, again, text me, message me. I'd love to collaborate with you guys to get as many resources and info out to us so that we can disseminate that to our constituency. Another thing, a retreat is this Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m. Obviously, it's about onboarding. It's going to be a lot of information. So I really encourage those who are new to Assembly, but also those who are seasoned members to come to this onboarding session. I think it's just really important that we're all on the same page and that we're learning from each other and learning more about each other, because frankly, I have not seen any of you in person since March. So I highly encourage you guys to come and just stay active. I think it's going to be a really great onboarding meeting, and I look forward to seeing you guys there. But other than that, I'm going to reiterate again, if you want to address the Zoom bombing that happened 2 weeks ago, definitely feel free to in comments as we go to the order. Obviously, if Zach and I have not made it clear, we are very much about transparency, and we want to have an open conversation about anything that you guys find urgent or worth a conversation with the Assembly. I just want to reiterate again that we obviously encourage civil discourse when it comes to it, and just working together. And I know it's hard in this time, but I will always encourage that with you guys. But with that, I will stand for any questions. All right, seeing none, I'm now going to move on to liaison/affiliate reports. If you are a liaison or an affiliate and you have a report, please raise your hand in the participants tab at the bottom of your page. I really want to get a t-shirt with that on it. I say it so many times, but there is a liaison or affiliate. Please raise your hand. All right. I'm going to give it another second or two, but seeing none, we'll now move, and seeing no old business, we'll now move into caucus breakout. Again, it's a 5-minute caucus breakout. It will be a strict count, so just get back here in 5 minutes and we'll continue. Thanks, guys. Great, and before I do, I'll let you know you have 5 minutes to speak and then 10 minutes for questions. I'll let you know when your time's up in both areas.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Straight. I'm from very Southern Virginia, and I'm a rising junior studying applied data sciences. I'm hoping to work in sustainable agriculture in the long term. A little bit about me, since I don't know many of you. I'm very passionate about ending period poverty, and I preside over Days for Girls at Penn State, which sews menstrual health kits for communities in need. I'm super excited to be nominated as an Associate Justice of the UPUA. I've been studying parliamentary procedure since the 6th grade, so for about 10 years now, and I have national titles in written testing and business meeting presentation from the Technology Student Association. As a national officer of that organization, I chaired a committee of state presidents that drafted and proposed a bylaw amendment to election procedures at the national level. It's still in effect today. Personally, I also proposed a national resolution and served on the Virginia State Constitution and Bylaws Committee for 5 years. Now as an alumni, I help with writing test questions for the parliamentary procedure event and have judged at several state conferences, students participating in the business meeting presentation to give a little bit of feedback to high schoolers that want to learn more about Robert's Rules of Order. I've also served as student representative on the United States Senate Career and Technical Education Caucus panel, so I have some experience with legislature on a larger scale. Since coming to campus, I have applied parliamentary procedure a lot more than I thought that I would. My copy of Robert's Rules has been opened many more times than I expected. I did write the Constitution for Days for Girls PSU when it was founded, and I've been sought out by at least 3 other student organizations on writing bylaw amendments or constitutional advice or just input on general procedure. I actually really enjoy parliamentary procedure. I think it's a really structured way to look at problem solving and a great tool to help assemblies take care of their business. I learned about the judicial board a little bit earlier this year when a friend of mine shared with me some of the tasks that they were handling, and I realized that a lot of that was things I was thinking about already and had spent a lot of time talking about in the past. So I figured what better way to share my experience with the student body than through the UPUA. I am more than happy to answer any questions about myself or my experiences. Thank you all for having me. I really do appreciate it. And I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Jessica. Continue to questions. Again, the I am here form is in the chat for you to fill out and for the ballot to email to you. But are there any questions for Jessica? And if you do, raise your hand in the participants tab. Representative Sarah Jordan.
Oh, hi, Sarah Jordan at large. Can you just talk about maybe a conflict that you had and overcame maybe at the university level and how parliamentary procedure kind of played a role in that?
I absolutely can. So earlier this year, I was serving as an officer on a campus political organization as the treasurer. And I was faced with a little bit of a dilemma regarding some finances, and an officer that was superior to me was asking me to handle money outside of ASA, which I was obviously not comfortable with. So for me, with a direct order to tell me to do something that I knew was unethical, the best thing I needed to do was take it to the members. So our constitution at the time had a clause that a 2/3 vote of the members could override any officer decision. And it was kind of an unfortunate situation because I'm no longer part of that organization. I wouldn't want to be a part of an organization that handles finances in that way. But I do feel like I did the right thing. And I think the biggest thing that I learned about that was, you know, your members are there to help you, and parliamentary procedure is there so that the members can carry out their will through the officers.
All right, Representative Shi.
Hi. First of all, thank you for your speech. And so, I mean, after hearing about your speech, your experience has been really, really impressive. So my question is that, so based on your view of our constitution and bylaws, would you have any suggestions on like, you know, how we can improve our constitution and bylaws in the future?
Immediate suggestions for amendments, I don't think so. The thing that I would like to learn the most about your constitution, and specifically the operations code, is probably about the committees. I've not been involved with the UPUA previously, so I don't know a lot about committees and commissions and how those things differ. So for me, that's something I'd like to learn a lot about and kind of understand why there are different options for ad hoc committees versus commissions and kind of what the intention behind that was.
Are there any other questions for Jessica? We'll give it a couple of seconds. All right, seeing no more questions, Jessica, I'm going to assign you to a breakout room, and you should get the option to join right about now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. President McKay, can you please explain your nomination?
I would be more than happy to. Friendly reminder to please fill out the I am here form in the chat when you get a chance. So I nominated Jessica for many different reasons, but when I really think of what makes a justice and eventually an elections commissioner the best candidate for the role, it comes down to ethics and integrity. And to be honest with all of you, I wasn't quite certain that Jessica would get into kind of the nitty-gritty of that situation, which she mentioned, but she did. And I can guarantee you that it was one of the most impressive applications that I've ever seen in my life. So when it then came time for the interview, I was just blown away at how, you know, invested she already was in really getting to know the organization. She asked many different questions on the executive branch and was very interested to know how she can really better the judicial board as an entirety. So I'm very certain that she'll make an excellent addition to that board as well as the commission, and would be more than happy to stand for any other questions about the candidate.
Are there any questions for President McKay? All right. Seeing no questions, we'll now move on to discussion. Is there any discussion on the candidate for justice?
Hello, everyone. I am very excited to be here tonight to ask for your confirmation to become the Director of Outreach and to head the first ever Department of Outreach of UPUA. My name is Aphrodite Biswas. I'm a junior majoring in chemical engineering along with a minor in engineering leadership development. I have been involved with UPUA since my second week of being here at Penn State. First, I joined as a freshman council member in the 13th Assembly, became an active member of the Outreach Committee. Then I went on to run a grassroots campaign and get elected as an at-large representative in the 14th Assembly, and further become the Vice Chair of Outreach. In these roles, I worked on several projects like bilingual and multilingual counseling at CAPS, Penn State PALS Mentorship Program, International Student Acclimation, Sustain State, and most significantly, the World Cultural Week. And here I am for a third year. This year, I wanted to have an executive role so that I am able to work on the organizational structure of UPUA to enhance its abilities as an advocacy group. I believe that my extensive experience within UPUA has made me well versed with the moving parts of this organization and the nuances of its smooth functioning. Apart from UPUA, I am heavily involved with the American Institute of Chemical Engineers and the Association for India's Development in executive roles. These have helped me get significant experience with larger things like programming, execution of events, outreach techniques, etc., and even smaller things like merely chairing meetings. I'm also a teaching assistant for an engineering course, and this has given me the unique experience of being a friend and guide to students at Penn State. I believe all of these experiences would be essential for me to tap into in order to execute the plans that I have for the Department of Outreach. Now, talking about the vision that I have for this role and the department as a whole. The creation of this department was definitely a step in the right direction because currently a lot of students have no idea what UPUA is. So, in my understanding, the main purpose of the department is to set up a direct and sustainable line of communication between UPUA and the Penn State student body, and all of its other stakeholders such as the borough, alumni, Penn State offices, etc. And to establish this, I sort of want to take a two-pronged approach. The first is taking direct action to increase reach of UPUA with its stakeholders, especially the student body. We all must be familiar with Newton's third law of motion. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So, by extension, stronger the outreach push by UPUA, we can expect better response from students, and this will be my first approach. Through more versatile presidential engagements, a significant increase in tabling events, and then increasing UPUA's presence with freshmen at orientation, open steering office hours, and bi-weekly press conferences and other fun things like that. Now, my second approach is based on internal reform and strengthening three main aspects of how UPUA functions. Three pillars, let's say. So the first pillar is revisualizing the image of UPUA to emphasize that we're more than just the student government and that we are an advocacy group who represent students with Penn State administration and not the other way around. I plan on achieving this by providing internal training to our members on how to represent the organization through orientations, one-sheeter guides, etc. And also by promoting UPUA through holistic flyers that highlight our advocacy efforts. The second pillar is increasing transparency and collaboration within UPUA and making sure that the legislative and executive body work hand in hand while also collaborating with everyone outside the organization. I plan on doing this by having one designated Department of Outreach member in each of our 5 committees who will be responsible for reporting out the work that's going on in these committees. This would help the department be more in control of what's going on. And secondly is to have internal officers held by our department for the rest of UPUA and especially the reps. This is just to help you guys better plan your outreach efforts for your initiatives. And this will also hone better collaboration between different reps working on similar projects. Finally, the third pillar is to increase inclusivity in terms of outreach. Be partners of the community in building a beautiful Penn State experience. And some of my plans for this effort include growing our monthly newsletter to include an external events section, include alumni highlights to keep our alumni engaged, and especially working directly with our caucus reps or liaisons, and especially their affiliates, as well as inviting more organizations to send in affiliates to UPUA. So all of these are just preliminary ideas of how I want to establish the Department of Outreach and help UPUA reach more students on this campus. But for now, if you agree with my vision for the future of UPUA and the role of the department, please consider voting in favor of my confirmation. I promise to definitely not go back on my word. Thank you, and now I'll field some questions.
Perfect timing. Are there any questions for Aphrodite? Representative Shi.
Hi, everybody. So I mean, we all work in the old, committee of outreach last year. I know you did some really, really great work into the World Culture Week, and you handled it really well. I have seen it, witnessed it. So, currently I'm in the Justice and Equity Committee, and we are still gonna do the events like World Culture Week for this year. So as director of the outreach, so how you plan to work closely with the Justice and Equity Committee initiatives in the future?
Okay, thank you so much for all the nice things you said, Tony. So yes, like I mentioned in my speech, I plan on having officers for reps to come and field ideas about initiatives and then further, help create an outreach plan for each of them. And for an event like World Culture Week or most of the Justice and Equity initiatives which would heavily involve other organizations of protected students and underprivileged groups. So a plan of outreach is definitely very essential for those. And like for now, my plan is to update what we call the org board last year and have all the information of the orgs, the meeting times, and a point of contact and all of those things in a manner so that whenever Justice and Equity needs the contact for an organization to host an event like World Cultural Week, I have it on record and it can just be quickly delivered to you. And that's essentially how I plan on helping not just Justice and Equity, but all the other 5 counties.
Yeah. All right, Representative Loscalzo.
Representative Ryan Loscalzo, Lion Pride. The Director of Outreach, one of their responsibilities is helping new affiliates become affiliates as well as maintaining communication with affiliates. What groups would you reach out to try to increase our affiliates and try to make sure that our connections are good with our current affiliates?
Okay, that's a really nice question. Thank you so much, Ryan. So I feel like right now, since we have a lot of new caucus reps positions, like we have Lion Pride now, we have ISC now, that sort of helps us with the level 1 of communication with multicultural organizations and other groups that are not represented correctly. So my initial thought of how to reach out to organizations would be to meet with the caucus reps and see what organizations fall under your umbrella, and then further reach out to all those organizations with a simple email saying, hey, so we have this concept of affiliates within UPUA, and if you do want to send an affiliate, please contact me or the department. And then just, that's how reach out to organizations to give affiliates. I do not want to start with a set list of, okay, these are the 10 organizations I want to reach out to. So, yeah.
Are there any other questions for Aphrodite? Again, you can use the raise hand function in the participants tab. All right. Seeing no other questions, Aphrodite, I'm going to assign you to a breakout room and you should get the request right about now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morse code comes through and it kind of, or something like that, a little beeping noise I'm hearing. I think it's coming from someone else's end. I'm not sure. And it's just kind of annoying. Sorry.
I turned it off.
Thank you.
That's his text tone, I think. But we'll now keep going. Is there any other discussion on Aphrodite? All right, congratulations, Aphrodite. You've been confirmed as Director of Outreach with a vote of 28-1-0. Congratulations. All right, we'll now move into line item C, swearing in of directors and justices. And just for clarification, I believe all the justices that we've confirmed before this are here, so they will all be confirmed at once. And yeah, President McKay, if you'd like to lead.
Yes. Hello. All right. Let us do this. If you could all please raise your right arm or right hand and repeat after me.
Did you want to unmute them?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be awesome.
Okay. All the justices and directors, if you could raise, and directors by meaning Miss Aphrodite, I'm going to unmute you guys. Gonna double check. All right, I believe I've unmuted all of them.
Okay. Great. In that case, please all raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to faithfully uphold
I promise
to faithfully uphold
the Constitution of
the
Constitution of
the University Park Undergraduate Association
the
University Park
Undergraduate Association
and to defend the rights
and to defend the rights
of each individual student
of each individual student
while working towards the betterment of student life.
while working towards the betterment of student life.
I shall perform to the best of my ability
I shall perform to the best of my ability
the responsibilities and duties
the responsibilities and duties
that have been entrusted to me by
that have been entrusted to me by
the University Park Undergraduate Body, Student
University Park
the
University Park Graduate Student Body
Student Body
through virtue of the office which I hold.
through
through
virtue
virtue of the office in which I hold.
Congratulations, everyone.
Congratulations, everybody. And just trying to mute everybody. Okay, so now we'll move into, Speaker Zong. I see that you have a motion, or at least you've messaged me.
Yep. Sorry, guys, I can't raise my hand since I'm co-hosting. But I'd like to make a quick motion for a roll call. Just for transparency, the policy change includes a constitutional change, which in our bylaws requires a 3/4 of all representatives in UPUA to vote yes for it to pass. So that number is 32, and right now we have 29 people in the last I am here form and like voted for the director confirmation. So if we don't have that 32 people, I think we would have to make a motion to table, just because we would be spending maybe another 15-20 minutes debating a legislation or piece of resolution. A policy change that has no way of passing if it doesn't hit the 32 yes votes. So yeah, I'd like to make a motion for that roll call right now.
All right, I see a second. Again, just because we are on Zoom and it's hard for me to get a voice vote, I'm going to use general consensus. If you don't agree and you're going against general consensus, please raise your hand just so I can acknowledge anyone that wants to speak out against it. All right, I'm seeing a general consensus and the motion will go through. Secretary, if you could go through roll call. I have given everyone the ability to unmute themselves. So once your name is called, unmute yourself to say that you're here. And once you are done, please mute yourself so there isn't any background noise. But Secretary, when you're ready.
Arthi Kalor.
Here.
Adeline Mishler. Alex Wu.
Here.
Amanda Bird.
Here.
Amy Gary.
Here.
Anne-Marie Round Sorensen.
Here.
Blake
Can you hear
Tolliver.
me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Blake Tolliver here.
Brian Schultz. Cameron McColgan.
Here.
Kara Flegel.
Here.
Dan Risser.
Here.
Aaron Bose.
Here.
Jacob Klipstein.
Here.
Rel Gibbs. Joshua Reynolds.
Here.
Cara DeLucio. Kelly Snyder. Carrie Even.
Here.
Lakin Meter.
Here.
Lewis Richardson.
Here.
Marie Meisner. Manny Almonte. Maddie McIntyre.
Here.
Megan Dalo.
Here.
Najee Rodriguez.
Here.
Noah Robertson.
Here.
Trisha Barungi. Rainier Foley DeFiore.
Here.
Refugio Lara.
Here.
Ryan Lascalzo.
Here.
Samantha Brown.
Here.
Sarah Jordan.
Here.
Stephen Zhang.
Here.
Sydney Gibbard.
Here.
Sophie Palillo.
Here.
Tim Tierney.
Here.
Tom Doherty.
Here.
Tony Shea.
Here.
Eugene Jung. Una Choi.
Here.
Jeremy McGovern.
Here.
Kaylee Quinnen.
Secretary, is that all?
Yep, that's all.
Oh, I believe.
And I see that Representative Snyder put in the chat that she might have missed her name.
Okay. So with that, and just for the sake of everyone's knowledge, I have 33 reps counted in the roll call vote. With that, I believe we will go forward with line item D, which is policy 0415, clarification of exec directors and their confirmation process. If there is any other motions or motions to explore before we go into that policy, please raise your hand. If I don't see anything, I will move on. Okay, so we're gonna go forward with, it was 32, but then, Representative Snyder said in the chat that her name was missed. So with that, I believe it was 33. I have 33. Secretary, can you confirm, or do you have another number?
I have 33.
Yeah. So there's 33 people present. It needs a vote of 32 to pass. Okay, so we'll go forward. Because this is policy and because it's been brought up before, I'm still going to go through the same procedure. So Speaker Zong, if you'd like to quickly introduce this just to go over it, and if there's anything to add, feel free to.
Yep. Can you guys see the policy on the screen? Cool. So really quick, before you move into the appendices, because I know there's a few amendments. Essentially, this is just a clarification of the executive directors and their confirmation processes, just because there's a lot of, words and like vagueness that gets confused in the executive board. And I believe Zach has a quick few slides in terms of a presentation and how this really changes some of the wording and stuff. Spoiler, doesn't really change much. Really, it's just like a wording issue to make everything a lot more, I guess, comprehensive and clear. But I can, after this, I yield my time to Zach to go through the slides, and then we can go to the amendments afterwards.
Okay, I'd be more than happy to. So you all should have by now seen the email that I sent out prior to today's assembly meeting. It includes a few of the graphics which I described that I would make for the assembly last assembly meeting. I'm going to stop sharing Stephen and share this screen. Nope, sharing the wrong screen. No, we're not. Can you all see a graphic? Looks like a
It's the proper graphic. You're good.
The flowchart. Awesome. Great. So we're actually going to start here. So yeah, right now the way which we've set up the executive branch obviously has the chief executives followed by the chief of staff, and then currently right now I suppose this combines both current and past executive roles. So directors haven't always been housed under direct departments. Instead, they've kind of been assigned to different projects or even committees And so they've been kind of scattered all over the place. Right now, for example, Director Van Horn, Director Biswas, even Director or Chief of Staff Shormansky as Director of Finance, and Director Abate serve as department heads, but then other directors in our history, UPUA's past, have served as like Director of the S-Book, Director of Alumni Relations, et cetera, et cetera. As I mentioned earlier, the departments themselves are growing. We're including different coordinators and student staff who are really experts in the matters which they are currently serving. Kelly, which we can get in, I believe Nora does plan on talking a little bit about the coordinators, which she's just recently brought on, is, for example, a material science major and is an incredibly talented student when it comes time to discuss sustainable materials. So that's an example. Proposed, it just simply adds an executive director as the sort of quote unquote department head. That would be the term which essentially is given to Trent, it's given to Nora, it's given to Aphrodite, and it's given also technically to Rachel. Underneath them are directors, and this policy essentially works to ensure that executive directors and directors are clearly defined in the Constitution, as well as their appointment process, their application process, all of it, even their confirmations, and by what votes are required to appoint them. Right now, executive directors, just like secretaries of departments in our federal government, require the Assembly's confirmation, just as judicial board justices do. The executive directors require a simple majority to pass the Assembly. And then directors, because they're much more nuanced, are essentially, they're vetted by the cabinet. So yesterday during our cabinet meeting, we actually voted on those 4 people which the sustainability department brought on. Much larger, this is how the executive board structure has been kind of set up in the past. As I mentioned, directors are kind of just scattered all over the place. They're not really defined under different houses. And there's nothing which really allows the president to get to know each of those departments in a very structured manner. So what we've already done is work to create a system which allows those directors, those department heads, to all essentially serve as the department heads and also serve on the cabinet. The cabinet is essentially a steering for the executive branch. So steering is made up of the chairs of all the committees. If you want to look at the executive branch as like a reflection of the legislative, each of the departments are committees and the directors are the committee chairs. Together, they form the cabinet, and we meet to discuss various platform issues, as well as how we can best serve the legislative branch. Proposed in this policy would simply change the term Director of Sustainability, Director of Communications, as I mentioned, to executive directors of those departments, and ensure that the roles underneath each of the departments themselves are also considered directors, thus clearly outlining exactly how they are brought on via application, as well as confirmed for directors, confirmed by the cabinet. And then it also clearly outlines the staff, which is essentially what we're looking to expand our communications department with, as well as possibly a few others. It's important to note that the structural changes are essentially, like I said, already made. We've just simply housed all of the directors underneath these departments, and then all of the departments serve on the cabinet. So this is simply a clarification policy which outlines that the executive directors form the cabinet, that it's solidified in our Constitution, and so that moving forward we have an executive branch which works as efficiently and as effectively as this one intends to throughout the next year. I believe it accomplishes, yeah, that's more or less all it accomplishes. It clarifies those names, it establishes the cabinet, and it outlines the application process and appointment process much clearer than it did in the past, which, as we all know, created a good deal of confusion, certainly on my end. I'd be happy to take any questions, as would, I'm sure, Speaker Zong.
Are there any questions for Speaker Zong or President McKay? Chair Jordan?
Sarah Jordan at large. So in this chart, I don't really see the standing committee like directors. I think that they're important to have in the committee. So how are we going to like are we going to incorporate them somewhere in here? I just think that's important to really make the committee kind of like, flourish in the ways that we've had used them in the past.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. So as you know, committee directors have historically been executive appointments. They are interviewed just the same as the executive directors would by steering, and then brought on to serve the legislative committee as they see fit. However, there's really no reason why that's the case. There's no reason why the president appoints somebody to help the legislative and to actually sit on that committee, booking rooms and working on initiatives under the legislative branch with very little communication between the legislative and the executive. So I've, as a chair last year, really begun to see kind of the inefficiencies that exist with appointing 5 executive members to legislative bodies. And as such, am much more interested in pursuing some kind of a encompassing director of programming or a deputy director of programming to that role. I'd considered a department of programming at the past, but essentially I'm not looking to appoint committee directors in the same way because I see kind of the point behind them, but it doesn't necessarily make sense. Rather, I would like to give you, the legislative branch, as chairs and as the speaker, the authority which you have now to appoint your own directors, not directors, I suppose, but perhaps staff, just the exact same as I would in the executive branch. It's really working to ensure that you have the agency to make those appointments yourselves.
All right, Representative Bose.
Aaron Bose at large. I think the major concern that I think that I would have is I like how we're clearly distinguishing like an executive branch role and a legislative branch role. However, I think that there's a big possibility with this current structure, especially taking away those directors of the committees, for a lot of gap in communication between the executive department and the legislative department. And so, for example, I think that it's important that we have directors for the committees like Representative or Chair Jordan had alluded to, because it's important to have those people that are charged to sit on the committees and communicate between the legislative and the executive branch. And kind of similarly, I think that it's important that we have that steering for the executive branch, but I think without that kind of bridge besides you and Chief of Staff Tremansky, between the two steerings, I think that there's a lot of areas and gaps for communication and areas where we could have a little bit more cohesive communication were we to have those directors of the committees.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I will respond by first saying that this policy has nothing to do with committee directors or perhaps their lack of appointment thus far. Instead, that's a decision which I've made, given that I can essentially shape the executive branch how I'd like. This policy merely works to ensure that the changes that with regard to kind of the department heads are solidified in name and are thus written in the Constitution moving forward, as well as their appointment process. So committee directors have nothing to do with this policy. But on it, I will say that the coordinators, which have thus far been kind of essentially serving as those student experts, like I've been saying, are the ones who would be sitting on committees as needed, right? So if there was a project which Academic Affairs was working on related to SRTE revitalization, which I think is very important, I think we can look into, for example, right now we would call them the coordinator of educational equity under the Department of Sustainability. But with this proposed change, they would be the director of educational equity as they were before, with a clearly defined appointment process. And then they would sit on the committee as it is needed, right? So as the legislative branch says, hey, I'm working on this project, how can the exec branch help? And vice versa. If there's a project which the executive director has been working on, the educational equity director has been working on, they would then go to the AAC committee and say, hey, I'm looking for some help on this project, how can we get involved? Rather than having a sort of all-encompassing committee director, which is very broad in terms of what they accomplish. As I've said, I've served as a chair with a director before and have found that their attendance at committee was frankly very minimal in terms of what I needed from the director. And I'm sure that that changes obviously from chair to chair, just depending on the relationship. But when it comes time for programming, we have somebody to ensure that that's the case, or that those programming events happen, as well as focus on programming events outside of just what the committees are doing. And then you have the directors who are much more expert focused, right? Like the educational equity to help serve on the committees where needed. Again, this changes literally nothing. The policy change does literally nothing to those. That was just a decision which I made as president. I would feel uncomfortable just appointing people to sit on legislative committees throughout the entire year.
If I can actually add to that real quick before the next question. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like if we wanted to have staffers in the legislative branch, right? The speaker and the chairs have the power to kind of work together and appoint those. So like I could, if you guys like need extra help or extra hands on anything, the same way that, you know, like Student Life had that exec board last year where we tried to do a bit with outreach as well. If you guys need staffers, let me know. And like, that's something that I 100% want to work with you guys with. And again, like just highlighting that this is really just a structural change. Let's say we have these discussions and these concerns and we want to bring, you know, directors, committee directors back. It can always be, you know, chief of staff also sitting as like an executive director of the committees with each committee director under them, if that's where the conversation leads after the summer or something like that. This is just creating that structure so that I think it's a lot more streamlined. I understand like this is a big change. Well, this itself is not a big change, but like President McKay's vision of getting switching out directors of committees is a really big change, and that's something that I think we have to have that conversation over time and kind of see where that goes. But that's a separate conversation to what this is accomplishing right now. In that, like, if we wanted to have those directors at you know, the discretion of either ourselves or President McKay, they can still happen in this new system. The system itself that we're changing with this policy doesn't get rid of them. That's just a decision that President McKay has made so far that we can definitely discuss in the long run.
All right, Chair Jordan.
Yeah, just Sarah Jordan at large. I just want to follow up with that question, kind of just so I'm like understanding it. As of right now, the proposed executive structure that was on the screen is saying that like if any committee has a programming event, then basically the director of communications would be handling each committee's like programming structure. I don't know if you mentioned that, but I may have missed it. So if I could just have some clarification.
Sure. I would be more than happy to. I'll pull back up. Sorry. So as I mentioned, this policy does nothing to. Well, wrong one. I think it should be. What does everyone see right now?
The proposed executive structure.
Oh, you see. Okay, so it is it's the form or the branch. You can see my mouse.
Yeah.
Right. So this policy change does not create that structure, right? This is that was merely a decision which I'd made, as I can shape the executive branch as I see fit, so long as the constitutional confines are met, right? So a good example would be the executive director of freshman councils, or freshman council, which is not changed, and I cannot change because it's in the Constitution, as is the SORA, the Student Organization and Rights Advisors. But the, for example, Director of Services, which would house future things like the Director of the Student Handbook. I'm in conversations right now, which could possibly eventually house SORA under the Department of Services, as well as possibly revamping our iClicker program, which offered students essentially very cheap iClicker rentals from semester to semester, and which we've had sitting in the office collecting dust for some time. Essentially just working to house everything under a department is my vision. But this policy, again, doesn't change that. Okay, so as a reminder, the current structure as things are right now without this policy is this. Rather, the policy simply works to name executive directors as the department heads, and then it works to ensure that those underneath them are directors, unless you have a situation in where you might need more than one photographer, right? So the director of photography helps lead that team of student experts who are very good at photography. And then a director of graphic design would obviously work with a department of graphic design, or with a team of graphic designers, in short. They are executive staff, which the Constitution allows me to essentially bring on at my will, which is exactly what we're doing now with the coordinators, who are all considered coordinators right now. It's just simply the process by which I'm appointing people through the vetting of the cabinet and through public application is not necessarily required, but I would like it to be required moving forward so that all future presidents are being as transparent as possible, and so that the executive branch ensures that there is a clearly defined application and appointment process that you just simply cannot miss when it comes time for directors. It still allows future presidents to shape directors as they see fit. If you think that, for example, a director of governmental relations is not necessary, you as the president have the ability to remove it. You also have the ability to add it. It just simply ensures that when you add it, or if you remove it, that the application process is made online, made public. I know there was an amendment to possibly keep it open for 7 calendar days as opposed to academic days, as well as the appointment process very clearly outlined through going through steering and then confirmation by the assembly. For executive directors. Directors are through the cabinet. So I hope that clears up any miscommunication. This policy, again, does not shape the structure of the executive branch. It just renames, it clarifies through a renaming process the heads of the departments, and it outlines very clearly, and we can go through it as Speaker Zong will, I'm sure, exactly what those processes look like for the appointment process. Does that make sense?
Are there any questions for Speaker Zong or President McKay? All right, seeing no other questions, we'll now move into discussion. Is there any discussion on the policy? And if you do, raise your hand in the participants tab in order to be recognized.
Real quick, this is where people make the amendments, by the way. So if you had an amendment earlier, please raise your hand. Thank you.
All right, Representative Loscalzo.
Ryan Loscalzo, Line Pride Representative. Let me just find it. I'm making an amendment to, let me just find it. What is it? Clause 11.3.2 of our Constitution, like the removal process, adding the word executive director there. Good, that's right there now. Yeah, because we forgot to add that in last time and it needs to be there so the Assembly is able to remove executive directors.
Okay. Again, just because of the functions of Zoom, I can't really ask for a voice vote on this to see approval. So again, I'm going to use general consensus because it is a small amendment. If there's a second and if there is any opposition to the amendment, please raise your hand. I'm assuming Representative Tierney, there is no opposition. But with that, I'm going to take general consensus. Please, this is where you use the chat to say that you'd like to say something in opposition to it. But Representative Loscalzo, would you agree with moving it behind directors? Okay. So with that, I'm taking general consensus just because it is hard to get it right now over Zoom. But if there's anyone against it, please put it in the chat or raise your hand. I will keep moving forward. But Representative Tierney.
Tim Tierney at large. Hello, everybody. I think Speaker Zhang sent out an email about the amendments that I was going to make. So they are both to the Constitution, and the only changes that they're 6.3.2 and 6.3.12. Yeah, so there they are. So the change is from 5 academic days to actually 7 calendar days. So the reason behind this, and I had a discussion with President McKay about this, The way that it was worded right now, I think that there could be some discrepancy on what academic means, which means we wouldn't be able to interview or appoint any directors, executive directors during summer session or during winter break. So it shouldn't really mean anything in the long term or the grand scheme of things. This is just more of a clarificational change that won't affect 95% of what we do in UPUA.
All right. With that, again, the way, just to clarify again, just so people are aware, the way that I'm going to go about this is general consensus. So if I don't see any raised hands in opposition to an amendment, I'm going to take that as general consensus that people unanimously approve of the amendment. Just because I can't ask for a voice vote, I have to manually create a poll, which is just creates a lot of time constraints there. But just being like super clear with you all, if there is opposition to the amendment, please raise your hand. If I don't see any, I'm going to take that as general consensus that the amendment is approved to be added. All right, I'm seeing no raised hands. And with that being said, the 7 calendar days will be added to the policy, and that will be a part of the entire policy as a whole when we vote. But continuing on, are there any other amendments? Please raise your hand if you do. Okay. Seeing no other discussion, I'm going to, whoop, speakers on.
Yeah, sorry. Again, no raised hands. That kind of sucks. Yeah, I again want to speak in support of this piece of legislation just because it does clarify a lot of things. And yeah, I think one thing that people kind of are feeling right now is just a bit confusion in terms of how this changes structure and everything. And I think it really doesn't. And again, like Zach and I disagree on a lot of things. And I think this thing with like the directors, with committee directors is something that I'll have a conversation with him about, something that I'll have a conversation with all the chairs about, just because I think that there does need to have that communication between exec and legislative branch. And we really want to establish that. So because I think even with all the changes that are happening this year, a lot of older reps and even returning and even newer reps are all a bit apprehensive about how everything could turn out. So I definitely understand that. But just as, again, speaking in support of this specific legislation, regardless of whether this passes or not, if President McKay makes it his decision not to have committee directors, whether this passes or not does not change whether those committee directors happen under his purview, if that makes sense, right? That's his decision and it happens under either structure. This literally just changes the names of those directors, because in the past, directors are different, directors of committees are different in their purpose and how they're appointed compared to, you know, director of sustainability or director of outreach. And those clarifications are what we're making here today. So if you are in support of just clarifying the process, having the 7 calendar academic days open for the application, for example, making sure that we understand the difference between a coordinator versus an executive director in terms of their positions, how they are appointed, and how they really step into office. Specifically regarding these processes, I would encourage you to vote yes, just because it does clear up a lot of the inconsistencies in our constitution and bylaws. And again, those other discussions can be had at a separate time regarding stuff like whether committees should have directors, because regardless of how this turns out, as much as I have issues with committee directors not coming back, that's Zach's final decision, regardless of whether this passes or not. And I just think that this is a very good change, regardless of how I think about that other issue.
All right, Representative Klipstein.
Hi, everyone. Jacob Klipstein at large. So I just want to say that I'm in favor of these changes. I think that they really clear up the processes that the executive branch has. But I want to speak more on the position of the director. When I was a chair, I loved my director. I loved using a director position. But I really don't know that it is something that we have to ask the executive branch for. One of my favorite things that I did as a chair is I implemented a student life executive board, completely independent of the executive branch of the committee. And they worked more in like a way of committee staffers. So even if you, and I don't think this piece of legislation really has anything to do with whether committees can have directors or not. I think you can have, if you are a chair and you want to have them, you can go ahead and have them. But I think this really actually, if you get into that dispute with the executive, you can take that power back in your own hands and appoint your own director and run them through the assembly side as a committee director, a committee staffer, as opposed to on the executive side. And that might actually even work better than having them work on the executive side, like in the way that we've done it in the past, as opposed to keeping them on the legislative side. I see this as really clarifying the divisions, or not divisions, but the roles of the executive branch and the legislative branch. And I think that this is really good for transparency. I think it's good for expanding what our executive branch can do and expanding opportunity in the UPUA, which is something I've been a proponent for since the start. It was one of the ideas that went into me creating a student life executive board last year. And I think that it doesn't impact whatsoever the power that the legislative branch has. And if we want to continue using directors, no offense, but President McKay has no power to tell us not to. So this really just defines what he can do, and we can still do what's in our power to do. So I'm in support of this. I'm also in support of directors, but I don't know that they're necessarily related to this piece of legislation.
All right, Representative Lascalzo.
Representative Lascalzo, Lion Pride representative. I also wanted to come out in support of this legislation. Last year, I served in the executive branch as the Associate Director of Technology, and to be very honest about that experience, it was kind of unstructured, crazy. No, I don't want to say crazy. It was very unstructured, and there wasn't a clear chain of command, even though I had the Director of Technology there, and then Spencer, when he graduated, it was kind of just like I was on my own. And it's kind of like there was all of this vagueness about who needs to be appointed? Does the executive branch even really need to meet that often? Or like even like functions? And even I just went back through, I went through old UPUA documents, and there was that one time for some reason the assembly agreed to appoint the they approved of the appointment of the directors of the committees and stuff, and like way back when, but it's all very vague. There was very vague before about appointment processes for different directors and staff members and such. And I'm very much in favor of this because it makes it very clear how things should actually work. And it would have greatly improved my experience last year if these changes were already implemented.
All right, and before I go forward, I'm just going to reiterate that this policy does specifically have to do with executive directors. It doesn't change anything about committee directors. So just because that's not really relevant to this policy, I'm going to just say that that isn't really relevant to the discussion. So, but I see that there is time yielded to Director Van Horn.
Hi, thank you, Noah, for yielding me time. I also wanted to speak out in support of this piece of legislation. As Representative Lascalzo pointed out, through serving on the executive branch last year, I realized that there was no structural chain of command. And I think that that disabled collaboration with the legislative branch as well as collaboration within the executive branch. Throughout my time in the executive branch, I had one meeting with the president last year, and I had no meetings with the vice president. Whereas this year, I have realized that through having kind of a more formalized structure, I am able to, as somebody who would be the executive director of sustainability, actually connect people with the leadership of the executive branch that are working on projects that are pertinent to have that kind of high up leadership support, as well as connect coordinators within my department with the legislative branch. So 100%, I think that this is a great improvement to the executive branch that we had last year. And I think that it is a necessary change to enable President McKay and Vice President Pathical to truly work on the initiatives that they set out to work on this year. So I very much so support this, this piece of legislation.
All right, is there any other discussion on the policy? Before I go forward, I'm just gonna read it, but while I wait for if there is any other discussion, I will reiterate 2 points that this is policy, so it does need 32 representatives to vote in favor of it. It is 3/4. From the attendance, there are 33, so just for those who are, who maybe just have their screen open, if you just be ready to be available to vote and unmute yourself for voting. And another point as well, it is by roll call. So again, just be on the lookout for unmuting yourself and muting yourself when need be. But with that, is there any other discussion? All right. I will now close the floor for discussion. With that, we will now move into voting. Secretary, when you're ready, I have given you all the ability to unmute yourself. Same rundown. Please unmute yourself when your name is called and then mute yourself so that there isn't any background noise. But Secretary, when you are ready.
Arthi Klor,
Yes.
Adeline Mishler, Alex Fu,
Abstain.
Amanda Bird,
Yes.
Amy Gary,
Yes.
Anne-Marie Round Sorensen,
Yes.
Blake Tolliver,
Yes.
Brian Schultz, Cameron McColgan,
Yes.
Kara Flegel,
Yes.
Dan Risser,
Yes.
Aaron Bose,
Yes.
Jacob Klipstein,
Yes.
Jarrell Gibbs, Joshua Reynolds,
Yes, sorry.
Cara DeLucio, Kelly Snyder,
Yes.
Carrie Even,
Yes.
Lakin Meter,
Yes.
Lewis Richardson, Marie Meisner,
Yes.
Manny Almonte, Maddie McIntyre,
Yes.
Megan Dalo,
Yes.
Najee Rodriguez,
Yes.
Noah Robertson,
Yes.
Patricia Barungi, Rainier Foley DeFiore,
Yes.
Fugio Lara,
Yes.
Ryan Lascalzo,
Yes.
Samantha Brown,
Yes.
Sarah Jordan,
Yes.
Stephen Zhang,
Yes.
Sydney Gibbard,
Yes.
Sophie Palillo,
Yes.
Tim Tierney,
Yes.
Tom Doherty,
Yes.
Tony Shi,
Yes.
Eugene Jung, Una Troy,
Yes.
Jeremy McGovern,
Yes.
Kaylee Quinnen.
Secretary, is that all?
Yep.
All right. All right, I believe there may have been a rep that rejoined back on before we did that roll call vote, but it's still over the threshold. So the count is 33-0-1. And it passes. All right. Now, moving on, we will now go into line item E, which is resolution 615, creation of UPUA coronavirus disease 2019, parentheses COVID-19, disproportionate effects on protected classes and solutions roundtable. Chair Rodriguez, would you like to introduce this? And if you could raise your hand so I can unmute you.
I think I'm unmuted. Is it?
You're good.
Oh, perfect. All right. All right. Thank you, Lexi. Hello, everyone. Thank you for bearing with us to this really important resolution that I do hope gets passed during General Assembly. Essentially, this is a topic and an issue that has been discussed since the really beginning and the formation of this new 15th Assembly. And it serves as a stark contrast as to anything before because, first of all, this pandemic is unprecedented. And second of all, we are learning day by day the immense impact, the immense disproportionate impact that I may add emphasis to, that this is having that's affecting students at our university. And it's very imperative that we do what we can to basically research, explore, and come to conclusions on how we can best find solutions to alleviate these effects on protected classes as defined by university standards. And I just want to start off by thanking the committee for really joining in and getting hands-on with this and adapting this to be the best piece of legislation that it can be. I will say out of transparency that the title wasn't that before, but it was adapted to include protected classes because there's so many reverberations of this virus and its effects that we don't know. And we're still learning about these day to day. So now it includes protected classes such as race, color, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, disability, or protected veteran status, and essentially how it's having a unique impact on these communities. I just really kind of wanted to point out a few really stark facts that really led to the creation of this, and it makes it even so much more essential that we tackle this in the best way that we can as a student government. And really something that's alarming is that the race and ethnicity data that's available identifies very large death rates in comparison to those that are Caucasian, especially within the Black and African American communities and Hispanic and Latino communities. And this kind of delves into the situation further by really addressing the racism that's coming out of this, directed towards a lot of Asian Americans and a lot of students that hail from outside international borders. So we really just want to go ahead and come to the best solution that we can in regards to that. And a really major point that I did also want to bring out, and this was also talked about during steering, and a lot of people have brought concerns about this, is that Native Americans are being disproportionately impacted as well. They have the third highest per capita rate of COVID-19 in the country as of April 30th. The Navajo Nation specifically. And a lot of these factors kind of originate from the fact that there's a lack of healthcare for these communities. It's really, it goes into the details such as socioeconomic status, like unjust living standards, and disproportionate workplace conditions. And most of these are just living in housing divisions that are farther away from medical facilities and grocery stores, proneness to racial residential segregation. And in terms of workplace conditions, protected classes are statistically likely to endure being classified as an essential worker and being more exposed to the virus and having a lack of paid sick leave that's causing them to go into work to gain an income for their family. And these underrepresented communities already have systematic inequalities that contribute to this. So basically, what we are proposing is a coalition of individuals that may be interested in being part of this roundtable, whether it be through community groups or whether it be through the average student at University Park. We want to get their input on how we can best alleviate the situation that's really skyrocketing and spiraling out of control and have the best impact that we can on our specific community. I'm really taking into account all these different perspectives and by contacting university administrative officials pertinent to that specific area or protected class and seeing what can we do to best alleviate this, because we're seeing these new issues of food insecurity. We're seeing these new issues of lack of financial stability, and we need to address that in the most creative ways that we can. And this roundtable is really going to be suited to do this. And justice and equity And I'm really excited to have this as really the first resolution, if it does pass through this committee, because this is tackling such a unique issue. And this virus is really exposing the systematic inequalities that have been present in our society for so long and really affect students of these communities at the University Park campus. With that, I now stand for questions.
Are there any questions for Chair Rodriguez? If you do, raise your hand in the participants tab. All right, seeing no questions, I will now move into discussion. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Again, just for anyone that's new, this is where you can make amendments if you see anything grammar-wise, really anything that you'd like to fix. But Chair Rodriguez?
I have two, is that okay?
We'll go through it one at a time, so say your first one.
All right, I motion to add line numbers.
Is there a second? And because you are a sponsor, that will be taken as friendly. What's your second one?
Okay, and the second one is to add basically a paragraph that's really short. Can I read that and then the source cited?
Yeah, and then make sure to email Secretary Liz.
Yes, Tyler has been alerted. Yeah. 1 second. Okay, so it was added below the third paragraph. And it states, when it came to the disproportionate infection rates of COVID-19 within underrepresented communities, it was also recorded that Native Americans faced increased exposure. A Harvard University epidemiology report in reference to Native American infection rates reported this. As of April 30th, the Navajo Nation had the third highest per capita rate of COVID-19 in the country after New Jersey and New York. Worsening the situation, Native Americans appear to have a higher risk of serious complications because they are likelier to suffer from diabetes, heart disease, and other conditions.
All right, is there a second? I'm seeing seconds, okay. I'm gonna ask for parliamentary question, even for myself. I believe because you are a sponsor, it can be taken as friendly. It's also very factual. So as chair, I'm going to take that as friendly, especially since the sponsor is suggesting it to be added. But if there's any discussion on the amendment, I can definitely open the floor for that at least. All right, I'm seeing no discussion, so that will be added as friendly, especially since the sponsor is adding it. But from there, is there any other discussion on the resolution? And Chair Rodriguez has added the paragraph in the chat as well as the link.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other discussion, I am going to close the floor for discussion. And with that, I will be releasing a poll for Resolution 615. Saying yes means you are in support of the resolution and creating the roundtable. If you're saying no, you do not. If you abstain, it means you were not present for the discussion, you are not knowledgeable enough about the discussion, or you simply weren't present. But I will launch the poll. I will give it about a minute, but not much longer. So just make sure that you're at your screens and voting. I'm gonna leave it open for another 30 seconds. I'm just not seeing the amount of people that voted as they did on the policy. And also just keep in mind, the only people voting should be representatives. All right, I am going to close the poll. And with that, the final vote for the resolution, and also encompassing Speaker Zong's vote. He can't vote because he is a co-host. The vote is 31-2-0, so it passes. All right, we're now going to move on to resolution or line item E, which is, or no, line item F, which is resolution 715, creation of the UPUA Racial Justice Roundtable. Representative Tolliver, if you would like to introduce this legislation, just raise your hand so I can unmute you. All right.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. This resolution, everyone, is titled the creation of a UPUA Racial Justice Roundtable. Was created by myself and Ajay. And as many of you may guess from this title of this resolution, its purpose will be to explore, identify, and resolve some of the inequalities that may be deemed present in regards to advocating for and enacting sufficient policy change necessary to address racial justice at University Park. Now, the creation of this roundtable specifically, the creation of this roundtable specifically is in response to the recent acts of racial injustice that has been occurring not only on a national level this year, but also within the state college community within the past year. As many of you may be aware, on Sunday, February 23rd, 2020, Ahmaud Arbery was shot and killed by two white assailants after partaking in a routine jog around his own community in Brunswick, Georgia. This case saw very little media attention in its early stages, with prosecutors seeking no legal action until 2 months after Ahmaud Arbery was shot and killed. An attempt at justice would have not been possible if it weren't for the widely spread video that it surfaced online detailing Ahmaud Arbery's death, which, as a result, created national outrage and an immense call for justice. Further, a case much closer to home, which occurred in State College last March, is still a tragedy. And that becomes really hard to ignore. On Wednesday, March 20th, 2019, 29-year-old Osaze Osagi was shot and killed after 3 State College police officers attempted to serve a 302 warrant, a 302 mental health warrant. This left communities within State College enraged and seeking immediate answers. I've been grateful enough to talk to a few individuals within the Black community who describe the issue as numbing and a continuous cycle that ceases to stop. Through the creation of this roundtable, we will be able to help find answers to these questions and help these community concerns and ensure that Penn State commits itself to racial justice to help combat this prevalent issue. This roundtable will be organized and scheduled by the Justice and Equity Committee with collaboration of other parties that may want to get involved. The roundtable shall be chaired by a representative that sits on the Committee of Justice and Equity. It will focus itself on addressing the shortfalls of racial justice and average social dialogue and in the tangible actions that could be taken by UPA directly or through advocacy to administrative officials based on these discussions. This will explore, identify, and resolve these inequalities that may exist on our campus, which is necessary for effectively advocating and enacting sufficient policy change to address issues such as racial justice at University Park campus. Now, as we can see today, the George Floyd case is something that deeply saddens me. I see it on social media repeatedly, over and over again. And it's just sad to see a community, which I'm a part of, continuously get murdered. And that's just something that it takes a toll on you after a while. So I think it would be a great way for, we would use the discussion of the national issues of racial injustice that occurs in order to bring home the idea that we as a community, together as a Penn State community, can help prevent racial injustice from happening on our campus. So that would be the purpose of this roundtable, starting with national issue, moving closer to home with the Mr. Osagi case, and then finding ways that we as a community can work to better our community in terms of racial injustice. Thank you, and I yield I now stand for questions.
All right, are there any questions for Representative Tolliver? All righty. Seeing none, I'm now going to move into discussion. Chair Rodriguez.
Thank you. Najee Rodriguez, College of Liberal Arts. First of all, I just really wanted to really just express my gratitude and appreciation and respect for Representative Tolliver and the initiative that he's displayed in the creation of a resolution that is so important for this community specifically, especially given the fact that we're at a predominantly white campus. This just transcends the average notions of racial justice, and it hopes to go further in that, whether that be in the sense of sensitizing other people to the struggles of being an African American in this country, or just best how to handle advocacy or how to be an ally. Whatever solutions arise from this, I know that they will be positive solutions that will really better Penn State as a whole and make sure that we're a more united and diversified campus. Second of all, I just wanted to make the point that I was 10 years old when Trayvon Martin was murdered in Sanford, Florida, and it's where I lived. This has been an issue that has been affecting so many people for so long. And I think that it really takes just one person or a group of people to really start advocating for justice at any sort of level. And in this case, it's the university level. And that being said, I think that no matter what advocacy it is, it will have the results that are going to be geared towards the betterment of a positive environment for all at Penn State, especially at the University Park campus. And I think that this will go a long step and a long way to show that we as a student government are actively listening to these groups that have not felt represented at all, and that we're making strident efforts to try to come to solutions at even a level as small as University Park that hopefully will stay with and people will retain it for years to come into adulthood, and hopefully share the values that we're trying to espouse with hopefully what this committee, this roundtable accomplishes. So great job, Representative Tolliver. I'm beyond proud of you.
All right, moving on with discussion. Representative Tierney.
Tim Tierney at large. Hello, everyone. So just, I guess, kind of on the trail of the U of M hat here, I was wondering, and I'm going to kind of gauge the assembly right now, if there may be support of adding maybe a paragraph just after the first one about George Floyd, and maybe how the University of Minnesota student government was already able to take tangible action to try and prevent situations like this in the future in the resolution. I don't have anything written, and that's not a concrete resolution or motion right now, but I was just kind of seeing if anyone would be interested in either supporting or writing something like that.
All right, something that I can do actually with this is if what you can do in the participants tab is say yes or no. If you are in support of what Representative Tierney said in terms of adding a paragraph, please click the yes portion. If you are against it, please say no, but that just helps with consensus rather than unmuting everyone and creating chaos. But I'm gonna give it like a couple seconds. So again, in the participants tab, you have the option to say yes or no. If you are in agreement of what Representative Tierney suggested, adding a paragraph about George Floyd, and if not, please say no. But as that is being, oh, it went away. All right. Just for the sake of this legislation is up, and I do believe you can't amend legislation once it's been voted on. I don't know if there is language typed up about it, or actually just for parliamentary sakes, I don't know if someone could answer that. I'm pretty sure that legislation can't be amended once it's been approved, yeah. So if that language would like to be added, that does need to be added tonight, or what can happen is this can be tabled for that to be added. If that's something that someone would like to motion, if there's discussion on that, please do. But if that's something that people would like to do, just raise your hand and we'll see a consensus. Representative Klipstein.
So I'm not sure that we should table this. I think we should pass it tonight. I think it's obviously more important. I'm just reading Tim's comment. Oh, actually, that would be, so I was going to say that we shouldn't like postpone it past tonight, but his motion is to just push it down in the agenda. So I'll stop talking because I'm pro that. I was just making a statement against pushing it out of tonight entirely.
Okay. Okay. So first, I do, again, the way that I've been operating with voice votes, just because it is hard to do over polls. If you'd like to do this over polls, again, you can always raise your hand and motion for that to be done. But, okay, so Representative Tierney has made a motion to suspend the rules to table this resolution, and then later on, suspend the rules once more to reconsider this under line item F. If this is something, I'm going to clear the yeses. If this is something that I'm going to take general consensus with it. So if you are against this, please raise your hand. If you want to speak up against it or don't approve of this motion, please do. That's how I'm gauging this. But if no one raises their hand, I'm going to take that as general consensus of people saying yes to this. And there was a second. So, all right. So seeing none, I'm now going to, there's the motion to suspend the rules to table this resolution. The motion to suspend the rules has gone through. Since that's the case, is there a motion to table the resolution? I just want to do it piece by piece. If you want to raise your hand by doing so, please do. Representative Tierney. Whoa, you went away. There you go.
Continue at large. Sorry, so I'm just formally making the motion now to suspend the rules and reconsider resolution 0715 under line item F, new business now.
Okay, I'm seeing a
Okay,
second. And with that, I'm taking general consensus again. Just I want to be clear with everyone. If you do not approve of this motion or want discussion on it, actually, I'll open up discussion for this motion for that purpose, but if I don't see any hands, I'm going to take that as general consensus as yes. Okay, I'm seeing no hands. That means I'm taking general consensus as the assembly approves. Resolution 015 will be moved under technically to line item G now, if we're moving it down to the bottom. With that, we'll now move on to line item technically F now. Resolution 815, support of Governor Tom Wolf's executive order suspending tenant evictions through July 10th. Before I have Chair Doherty introduce this legislation, just for the one previous, please make sure that you have that language up and ready if you want it to be considered tonight. But going forward, Chair Doherty, would you like to introduce Resolution 815? You could raise your hand so I can unmute you. All right, Representative Doherty or Chair Doherty.
Yes, I would actually like to yield my time to Representative Richardson.
Representative Richardson, if you could just raise your hand so I can see you. All right, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so this legislation's this resolution, it's pretty straightforward. It's basically just in support of Governor Tom Wolf's, I guess, unnamed executive action. I couldn't really find a name for it, but it occurred on May 7th, 2020. What it basically does is it extends a prohibition on landlord expulsions and sort of like evictions during the at-home period and during the COVID-19 pandemic. What this does is it essentially ensures that everybody has a place to stay, and that even if they're coming upon financial hardships during this time, which is certainly understandable. We have a lot of stats in the nature of the situation that sort of contextualize why that might be a problem, especially for students. It ensures that they'll first and foremost have a place to stay. And it also ensures that, if we have a stay-at-home order in effect, that people can actually stay at home because they have a home. So it's pretty self-explanatory, I think, in that regard. Aside from that, it encourages, if you can scroll down a little bit. Yeah, so it talks about, we really sought to, Tom and I in this legislation, really sought to contextualize how this affects students. And unless, just your average Commonwealth citizen. And so you can see in that paragraph at the top, we talk a lot about how, many students are faced with 12-month leases. They often are taking residence in 2 places at once and may not be paying for that. And they may be paying for that 12-month lease and not actually utilizing the property, which definitely presents some sort of financial hardship. I know personally this is a situation that I'm involved in, and I know it really is, it kind of sucks, to put it lightly, I guess. But yeah, it just ensures that, I know that this faced a little bit of opposition in Gov Affairs for this reason, but it's really important to remember that this does not exempt people from paying their rent. It just provides some sort of leniency for those who may be facing hardships. What it really encourages is that you continue dialogue with your landlord or your renter or realtor, and really just talk about your situation. And yeah, so if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
All right, are there any questions for Representative Richardson? All right, seeing no questions, I will now move into discussion. Is there any discussion on the resolution? All right, Representative Richardson, did you have anything? No, okay. Representative Klipstein?
Jacob Klipstein at large. All right. So the crisis that we are going to have with evictions after the coronavirus crisis is one of the biggest issues that are facing our country today. And I'm really glad that we've been working. I'm glad that I was a part of the team that helped pass the resolution last assembly to encourage Tom Wolf to make this decision. I'm really happy with this legislation, but I have some more supplementary information that if you guys want to write down to share with your friends, or if the media wants to write it down and publish it, that I think will be really helpful to students. Basically, so you have that July 10th deadline that the governor has set. There are some buildings in downtown State College that are buildings that are backed by the federal government with loans that they've received that way. So there are some buildings that their deadline of moratorium of evictions goes past the 10th to July 24th. Some of those buildings include the Ambassador, the Legend, the Edge, and University, oh my bad, Calder Commons. I'm gonna send a link in the chat that sends you to a website that'll help you if one of your buildings is in that list, and that can help you through this process. The website is don'tgetkickedout.com. It's being run by the Netflix show Patriot Act. Use it, share it, use it as a resource for your students. These buildings that are protected until July 24th, make sure that people know about them, because this could really be a massive issue for students when these protections run out.
All right. Going forward, Chair Doherty.
Hey guys, sorry, Tom Doherty at large. So a big thing too that I would just, I think it's sometimes hard to kind of like put into perspective, maybe if you're like moving off of campus or if you're ever living downtown. So like, for instance, I'm in my house right now in State College. I live with 7 other people currently. We have a 12-person lease. And if one person is to not pay for that lease, we have like a lump sum, and some other landlords do this the same way too, in which if one of the people from our lease do not pay their sum, their part of the sum, then we all get evicted. So I'm really happy for this. I imagine there's some other houses in the same situation. And I'm really glad that Lewis did really great work on this. And I'm hoping that even this will be extended further out past July 10th, because I know that some students are definitely going to need it.
All right. Moving forward, is there any other discussion on the resolution? Again, I'll reiterate, this is where amendments can be made if you see anything grammar-wise or even just see anything that you disagree with. But again, I will keep discussion open for about a couple more seconds. All right. Seeing no other discussion, I will close the floor. Again, I'm going to release the poll. And with that, I'm going to reiterate the votes. When you vote yes, you're supporting the resolution, Governor Tom Wolf's executive order to suspend tenant evictions through July 10th. saying no, you disagree with this resolution, and abstaining means you weren't in the room during discussion, or you may not have enough knowledge because you weren't here for discussion, whatever it may be. But again, I will launch the poll. I will give it about 30 seconds to a minute. Just make sure you vote. Just a reminder, representatives are the only ones to vote, and I'm just clarifying because I'm not seeing the number that we did in policy. So I'm going to wait a couple more seconds for the last remainder of votes, but then I will be ending the poll. So if you haven't voted yet, please do. All right, I'm going to end the poll. And with that, and also including Speaker Zong's vote because he cannot vote as a co-host, the vote is 31-1-0. Okay, going forward, this is where we go back to the creation of the UPUA Racial Justice Roundtable Resolution 715. It's technically line item G now. So with that, I will go to Representative Tolliver, if you'd like to just reiterate anything. If not, I will also leave the floor open for discussion since that's where we left off, unless there are any questions. Since the floor is open for discussion, if you guys have the amendment ready. Okay. Because Representative Tolliver is the sponsor, I'm going to recognize him first.
Yeah, so basically this roundtable will look to ways we can explore how we can prevent racial injustice from happening on our campus. It'll definitely get discussion going, which could be very helpful to all people from all walks of life to get a great gauge on what others' lives are like and what others' plights are like, so we can work together as a community to help better the Penn State as a whole.
Okay. As I see Representative Tierney's message in the chat, there is the option to motion for a 5-minute caucus breakout if that motion is made. Okay, I see a couple of hands first. Representative Tolliver.
Oh, I think I forgot to put my hand down.
Okay, you're good. Representative Tierney.
Tim Tierney at large. Hi, everyone. Sorry if you can hear nausea or some recoil in the background. We do have it. Give me just a second. I can share it with the secretary and Speaker Zhang so that we can get it out to everyone.
All right. With that, Chair Jordan.
Sarah Jordan at large. If you guys need me to motion for a 5-minute caucus breakout, I can do that. Sorry. If you guys want to not rush.
Okay. I see a disagreement from Representative Tierney, so I'm going to assume that they're close, if not ready to. I believe they're sending it to Secretary Lazinski.
Also, real quick, Tim, when you're done with that, can you just copy and paste that into Zoom so I can, yeah, perfect.
Representative Tierney, was your hand already raised or was that a new? Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, don't know how to do that. But Tim Tierney at large, I just sent it to Speaker Zhang and Secretary Lazinski. I will copy and paste it into the Zoom chat. So those are the two paragraphs we'd like to add at the end of, I think at the end of the first paragraph, and the nature of the situation. And then of course, the little parentheses are for links that were in the document I shared with Speaker Zhang as well as Lazinski. So I don't know if Representative Rodriguez would like to talk about it a little bit, but I guess I don't really have anything.
Okay. Again, the floor is open for discussion, and I see Chair Rodriguez.
I'm Najee Rodriguez of College of the Liberal Arts. Yeah, so essentially, honestly, it's quite disheartening to see like these situations and these incidents, like blatant murder, has been subsequently occurring since the creation of this resolution. And I really think it puts everything into perspective on the state of what we're trying to do here in terms of really exploring new avenues of doing the best job that we can at really educating others on the notion of racial justice. And us doing this right now and having to add this at the very last minute just goes to prove how deeply ingrained this systematic racism is within our country, and how we can do our own part and try to do the best job that we can to ensure that we dispel those thoughts of systematic racism and inequality at a smaller level at the University Park campus, like I spoke of earlier. So I just really wanted to put that into perspective, because really writing this, it really does come into a very saddening visual view of what has been occurring in the past few weeks.
And with the introduction of this amendment, is there a second, just for the sake of procedure? Okay, I see a second. Is there any discussion on the amendment? All right, seeing no discussion, once again, I'll reiterate, I'm taking general consensus. So as of right now, I'm seeing a very large yes from the Assembly. If anyone disagrees with this amendment or doesn't want it added or wants discussion on it, please raise your hand. I'm gonna give it like a couple seconds. If I don't see a raised hand, I will take that as general consensus. All right. I will take that as general consensus of adding the amendment to the larger resolution. And with that, we are going back to discussion on the entire resolution, if there is any. Okay. Seeing no other discussion on the overall resolution, I will now close the floor for discussion. What I'm going to do is send out the poll for resolution 715. I will reiterate what you're voting for. When you say yes, you are in support of creating the UPUA Racial Justice Roundtable. By saying no, you do not want the roundtable to be created or disagree with the resolution. And by abstaining, it means you are not present for discussion, you're not knowledgeable enough, or there's a personal conflict with the resolution. But with that, I will launch the poll. I will give it about 30 seconds to a minute, but please vote when you see it. I'm going to give it another 20 seconds. I'm just not seeing the numbers from past policy, but another 30 seconds and then I will be calling it. All right. With that, I'm going to end the poll, and including Speaker Zong's vote, because you can't vote due to co-host privileges, The vote is 31-1, so it passes. All right. As we go forward, we will now move into line item 11, report by the Chief Justice of the Judicial Board, Rachel Shookman. If you could raise your hand just so I can unmute you. Chief Justice Shookman.
Hi, everyone. So as President McKay mentioned in his report, we did conduct 5 interviews over the weekend for the open Associate Justice position on the board. Obviously, Jessica Straight was confirmed tonight as an Associate Justice, and I have no doubt that she will perform an exceptional job in the position. That being said, we will have the application for justices open. I believe that application will close the first week of the fall semester. And then we will be filling the 4 remaining seats on the board. So as of now, we do have 5 justices moving into the summer session. As always, the application for community group seats is on the website under current openings on upua.org. So if you know any organization that would like to apply for that seat, definitely reach out and let me know if they have any questions. And as always, that application is open. Thank you.
All right, are there any questions for Chief Justice Shookman? All right, seeing none, I will now move on to executive reports. Are there any executive reports?
I can't raise my hand as well, but so hi guys, I hope everyone's Wednesday is going well. I know that it's been a while since we last saw each other and there's a lot of work that we've done in the meantime. But I'm first of all excited to welcome the new members of the executive branch. I think it's great that we are bringing some new people on, building the departments out, and I encourage you to share some of the applications that are still out. We're looking for people, fill them, send them out to your friends, and hopefully we can fill those by the time we're all back in the fall. So looking into the next few assembly meetings we're having, tonight we tested out some new settings for the Zoom meetings and how we had people join and everything. And in the future, we will be looking into live stream options, which will be especially great for people who usually just call in to listen to what we have to say and aren't really here to engage in the discussion. So not necessarily for reps, but for a lot of the media and our audience. I've spent the most of the week, the past few weeks, planning for the retreat, which is happening this Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m. I'm really excited. I know it's going to be a lot of information, but I think that these 3 hours are really going to be like a jam-packed kind of day of a lot of like really great ideas and some things to get us started for the summer months. The agenda was sent out today in Teams, so please take a look at that and bring some questions you may have. There's a portion on the agenda specifically for questions from you all, so I hope to hear from you all there. Reminder that this is an important session for new and old members. This is going to be an opportunity for a lot of people to be bringing some decisions and changes that we've kind of done and kind of explaining these processes. So it's very imperative that you are there to listen. There's going to be very little like reasons that you should not be there. We kind of planned it out so that everyone should be available. But please communicate if you cannot attend. As I said, it's Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m. We are beginning to have conversations internally about what the fall semester is going to look like as we're coming up on that June 15th decision day from the university. So please come to us if you have any questions, but for the most part, we don't really know anything right now, just like you don't know. But we will be kind of reevaluating how we have assembly meetings, how we have, even access into the hub office. Things are all going to be very different. So I welcome feedback and ideas for that as well. I've had continued conversations over the past few weeks with chairs about Microsoft Teams, and I'm really excited to be presenting a Why Teams presentation at the retreat on Saturday. So I look forward to you hearing your questions about that as well there. And about this retreat, this is basically going to be one of the first of a few. We want to not overwhelm you all at once, and I'll obviously have something in the fall once we're able to be together in certain regards, to have like an actual retreat. We can have some bonding games and activities. Should be really fun. With the retreat, please fill out the introductory slideshow links that I sent out. I know that that was sent out a while ago, but I bumped it in Teams today. Fill it out so we can kind of see who you are and what you're really like as much as we can through a screen. And that'll be great to see on Saturday. So I look forward to seeing all of you guys there, and I will stand for questions now.
Are there any questions for Chief of Staff Jermansky? All right, I will move on to Director of Outreach, Biswas.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to take a little bit of your time and say thank you for confirming me tonight. I'm really excited to get to work about all the plans that I discussed in my speech today. So I will be meeting with President McKay sometime this week or next to go over the plans that I suggested and see how that may fit with everything UPUA is up to these days. I also need to get up to date about what's going on with within UPUA. I've been trying to keep up, but there's still more I need to know about what's going on right now to plan our outreach efforts better. And one other thing, so I know I did get confirmed just today, but in my individual capacity as a student at Penn State and with my involvement with global programs, I have the opportunity to be in the welcome video for international students. And the main reason why I'm there is to plug about UPUA and student government at Penn State. So I think that's that would be my very first outreach effort as the Director of Outreach now. So I stand for questions now.
Are there any questions for Director of Outreach, Biswas?
Trent has something.
Oh, I think he just has a report.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Seeing no questions for Director of Outreach, we will now move on to Director of Sustainability, Van Horn.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Welcome, Director Biswas. We're really excited to have you on the team in the executive branch. I'm excited to continue to work with you this year. For the Department of Sustainability, I have a few updates. I'd first like to talk about some of the coordinators and now directors that we've welcomed into the department, and then I'd like to touch on a few of the initiatives that we're working on. So we've welcomed 4 new directors that were all unanimously confirmed by the cabinet as the new policy declares they should be. So we've introduced, or we've brought in 2 for sexual assault and misconduct prevention. It's been great already working with them. They've helped with the Title IX statement that the UPUA released with Lexi and Zach kind of spearheading that, and it was picked up by a few of the news outlets. So I was really excited to see them already get the ball rolling on collaboration within the executive branch. We're currently looking at the specific challenges that are being faced by victims of domestic abuse and violence, specifically during the COVID-19 pandemic, when a lot of internships have been canceled, a lot of people are home, that being home might not necessarily be the best for them. And that's something that I'm looking forward to talking to Chair Rodriguez about and bringing in those directors in those conversations moving forward. So if you'd like to work on that initiative or would like to contact me about that, please do so. I'd be excited to hear representatives' input on that. We've also welcomed a director of sustainable materials and products. We're looking at doing life cycle analyses of certain unsustainable materials that are on Penn State's campus. Essentially, life cycle analyses kind of interrogate all of the criteria that goes into making a product, such as water usage, carbon footprint, and things like that. I am connecting the new director of sustainable materials and products with the Sustainable Operations Committee, so they will be directly working with the Sustainability Institute to compile a really research-heavy report. And I'm maintaining communications with Chair Jordan in doing so. I'm really excited for that partnership. Fourthly, we've also welcomed a sustainable waste management director. So her name is Anne. Actually, it's very near and dear to my heart because I was Anne's orientation mentor when she came to Penn State. So it was really cool to see her be getting involved in sustainability. I'm sure I've left a lasting impact on her in many ways, and this is probably the most positive. So good there. Anne is currently looking at doing potential pilot programs in waste management, and I'm really excited as those ideas come to fruition and updating the assembly on exactly what they are and looking at ways that we can collaborate with the legislative branch there. She is particularly interested in working on food waste initiatives, which is something I'm really passionate about because it gets into food insecurity and food justice and really interrogates the issue holistically. So super excited to have her on board. On top of that, I'm working on some initiatives. Like I said, I've connected Anne and Kelly, who is the Director of Sustainable Materials and Products, with the SOC, which is the Sustainable Operations Committee, to really get some research done in those realms and to ensure that our advocacy is really legitimately sustainable. So excited there. I've also connected with the chair of the Student Sustainability Advisory Council, whose name is Lydia Carey and a good friend of mine. We've talked about how to integrate different sustainability councils' voices into the UPUA and really inform our advocacy. So we're not only getting the voices of student experts that we have in the department, but we're also getting the voices of student experts who might not be directly involved in UPUA, but are still students at University Park and should have a say in what the UPUA does. On top of that, I've connected with Representative Flegel about the Climate Crossover Week and talked about kind of what the advocacy looks at and really how to interrogate climate action holistically. And I'm very excited to see all of the ideas that she's been working on come to fruition. I also really wanted to take the time to commend Representative Rodriguez and Representative Tolliver on the legislation that came to the floor tonight. I spent a lot of time talking about how sustainability is not just environmental sustainability, but it's also getting into societal injustices that we're facing as communities and as a nation. And I think that really bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion and interrogating kind of the racial injustices that exist within our criminal justice system and the way that people of color are treated by police and law enforcement is truly essential with working towards a more sustainable society. So I'd really like to commend them on the legislation that was brought to the floor tonight. And I'm really hopeful to see that kind of continued advocacy in the future. Lastly, in some legislation that was passed during the last meeting, I was charged with creating a report on the potential of creating a commission within the UPUA between kind of enabling a partnership between Faculty Senate on their recent climate resolution and within UPUA on how we can get sustainability into the curriculum. Representative Foley DiFiore and I had a meeting earlier today, and I would like to, Lexi, can I yield him time to talk about this? Or, okay, I would like to yield him time to talk about our meeting and kind of what route we're pursuing with that. Can I do that?
Yeah. Representative Foley DiFiore.
There we are. Thank you, Lexi. And thank you, Nora, for yielding me time. So following up with the legislation that we passed last assembly, we had some very productive meeting earlier today with several key members from Faculty Senate, including Doug Goodstein from the Sustainability Institute, Brandy Robertson, and Peter Buck. And I'm happy to say that we've identified some very great opportunities for expanding sustainability, not only in the climate action adaptation plan for the university, but also potentially in the curriculum and in other areas across Penn State. And so I'm very excited to keep working with those members of Faculty Senate and Director Van Horn and see what other opportunities we can unearth and what great projects we can identify and work on moving forward.
All right. Director Van Horn, do you have anything else for your report? No. There you go.
Thank you. Again, if you have any questions about anything that I or any members of the Department of Sustainability are working on, please connect with me. I'd love to talk about sustainability, talk about your interests, learn about you, and together collaborate to create a better future for us all, because that's what I'm about. So thank you. I guess that concludes my report, and I will stand for questions if there are any.
Are there any questions for Director Van Horn? All right, seeing none, I'll now move on to Director of Communications. Director Bate, you could raise your hand so I can see you. I can also find you because I know I think you're driving, but give me a sec. I am going to unmute you right now.
There we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. How are you doing tonight? So as Lexi said, I was moving up the last of my stuff from State College today. Left my house around 5 this morning and just got back about 10 minutes ago. But I had assembly running through the Bluetooth on my speaker. So I was listening content to what you were doing. Some great legislation passed out today. One note on move out procedures, even though it's not directly in my realm, having moved out today, just wanted to remind everybody, if you are going to be moving out of your on-campus or off-campus housing, please remember to be sticking to social distancing guidelines and safety procedures that were laid out by the university. Ensure that you're sticking to your scheduled time frame to move out, wearing your mask when you're in public. If you have any symptoms, or anybody in your immediate family that you've been in contact with recently has had symptoms, please make sure that you're not returning to campus until you've passed the quarantine guidelines. In my just brief interactions with some of the staff that was around campus today, they're all anxiously awaiting the day that we can all get back together in person again, and they're working very hard in State College while we're away. On a communications note, we have been doing a lot of work in the communications department. It's currently still just me. We are running applications, going to be conducting interviews in the next couple days for some more positions. But in the meantime, there are 2 graphics that will be coming out in the next 24 to 48 hours that I'd like everybody to pay attention to. On that note, I want to make sure that everybody's following the UPUA social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Moving forward, maybe not so much in the summer, as it's going to be very consistent in the fall. When we're putting out content, it's going to be very important that all of our representatives are resharing the content, sending it out to their constituencies. That's a really important facet of what we do in communications. So if everybody would please pay attention, in the next 24 to 48 hours, there will be a graphic posted about applications that are live on the UPUA website. It's nothing about specific applications. It's more so just like a general graphic. It's actually kind of cool. It has like the Nittany lion pointing, and it says like, "I want you" for the UPUA, like the US Army poster. It's really cool. So please reshare that when it comes out. Additionally, there will be graphics coming out that were requested by the Governmental Affairs Committee, reminding everybody about the primary election that's on June 2nd, which is this coming Tuesday. So those will be coming out shortly. If everybody could please reshare them on their Instagram site or on their social media platforms and send them out to their constituency, that would be greatly appreciated. As many people have mentioned tonight, including the Chief of Staff and the Vice President, we'll be having our UPUA retreat coming up this weekend. I will be going into a little bit more depth about what the comms department is going to be looking like, as well as what we'll be requiring of the representatives and what we'll be providing to the legislative and executive branches. Additionally, as some of you may know, I was the previous Assembly's parliamentarian. So I will be kind of preparing a little bit of the parliamentary procedure guidelines. I do think that we brought on a lot of very, very talented and experienced and knowledgeable individuals on parliamentary procedure in multiple different branches. So it will be multiple people kind of giving a rundown about the basics of parliamentary procedure. This coming weekend, before Saturday, there's going to be a form prepared in Teams for your communications request. I'm going to touch on that a little bit more in the retreat, but basically that's going to be where you request all of your action items from communications to make sure that a proper time frame is given. It doesn't really help the department when things are asked very last minute. I know that things arise sometimes, but we need time on our end to make sure that everything comes out well done. We want to make sure that the quality of the content that you're receiving is of the highest standards. So the form will be available before Saturday, and I'll go over it then. Finally, the last thing that I have on my list, the policy that passed today on the changes to the executive branch outlines some new departments and areas within communications, some of which including like the speech writing corps, the photography corps. I have had several representatives reach out to me about whether or not a representative can join those. To my understanding, the Constitution says that executive staff cannot be a legislative representative. However, if any of you are interested, if any of you are passionate about photography, if any of you are, passionate speechwriters and would like to contribute to the work there, please feel free to reach out to myself, and the rest of the executive branch can take a look at maybe getting you all a role in that position if you feel so inclined to join. So that, I believe, is about it, and I will stand for questions.
Are there any questions for Director Abate? All right. Seeing none, we'll now, are there any other executive reports? You may raise your hand if you do. Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to report by the Speaker of the Assembly, Speaker Zhang.
Give me 1 second here. Okay, I'm unmuted. Cool. Hey guys, hope you're all doing okay. And as you can see, I'm very excited that we have virtual backgrounds back again. But yeah, just thought I could do something to kind of cheer everyone up as we are kind of getting a bit slow and bogged down with everything. But yeah, thank you all for, I guess, staying through the entire meeting. But this will be hopefully very short. I essentially had one-on-ones with all reps these past 2 weeks, and thank you to everyone. I really appreciated all the conversations we had. I shared a lot of the feedback with steering, and we really hope to take everyone's suggestions to heart. To heart as we continue in this assembly. Even like with this retreat, a lot of things that we focused on, or we will focus on, are directly related to a lot of the issues that some new reps might have in terms of just not being feeling like they have the resources they need to succeed. Whether it is, I guess, learning more about the legislative process or how to really effectively use your voice. We're just gonna cover a bunch of little stuff, but it's also extremely important for all reps to attend. If you can't attend, please send me an email or text me, shoot me a message. And it's gonna be Saturday 1 to 4, so please let me know as soon as possible, just so that we can have a count for everyone. It's going to be a lot of information, yes, but I think a lot of it's going to be extremely helpful from people who have a lot of experience in advocacy. So yeah, hopefully it's going to be fun. Again, I'm currently working with SOTP to increase UPUA's involvement with Welcome Week. Unfortunately, we weren't able to work with NSO given that it already began. But right now I'm waiting for President Barron's, I guess, announcement whether we're going back to campus or not before we decide how to move forward with SOTP and really involve UPUA in Welcome Week. I met with President McKay to discuss, again, legislative direction for the coming year. It was a really long conversation. I think that we are moving a lot of changes ahead very quickly. If anyone ever needs any clarifications on what President McKay is trying to do or what I'm trying to do, please let us know, keep us updated, especially with all of your thoughts and ideas. I know that it's a rough ride when we are over Zoom and we can't necessarily talk to each other, while also taking in all of the changes that we're trying to make. And I definitely want to make sure that everyone's voices are included and no one's left out. So if you guys ever have any questions or have any issues with anything that we're doing so far, please let me know. It can be honest, I can take it, don't worry. It's just something that I think definitely should be done sooner than later if you have any issues with what we're doing. I met with Chief of Staff Shermansky to go over team's expectations and how to better incorporate the Microsoft suite into the 15th Assembly. I think that that's something that we definitely should aspire to do, just because the Microsoft suite is free for us and it's a really, really good resource in terms of just consolidating everything that we do and everything that we kind of utilize here at UPUA. Finally, on Friday, I have a meeting scheduled with a focus group. I believe it's with Danny Shehe and consists of a few other student leaders. And it's regarding how to really make sure that different regulations are enforced if we come back on campus in the fall and over the summer, just to make sure that just have a dialogue and conversation about how to make sure students are being safe and responsible as they're coming in to either pack up stuff or potentially if we get back on campus over the fall. So if you guys have any ideas on how to really reinforce that, please let me know. I'd love to hear everyone's concerns and ideas and suggestions, just so that, you know, with more accountability, the more comfortable we are with coming back on campus, making sure that we have all these safeguards in place, the greater the likelihood that we actually will be able to get back on campus. So yeah, I really appreciate any suggestions, ideas, and stuff. That meeting is going to be on Friday, so before then, if you guys could just send me ideas, that'll be awesome. That's the end of my report, and I can stand for any questions.
Are there any questions for Speaker Zhang? All right, seeing none, we'll now move on to comments of the committee, starting with academic affairs. Because Chair Barungi is not here, I will now recognize Vice Chair Gibbard.
Hi everyone, Sydney Gibbard, College of Engineering. So basically, over the past week, we have held a bunch of 2-on-1s with most of the AAC reps, and we divided the AAC initiatives into 5 different pillars to really organize them and have people understand like what bodies they'll be interacting with for the next year. Also, a bunch of members of the AAC committee met with career services, personnel, and LAMS regarding the Lion Link job shadowing project that was really spearheaded by UPUA over the past few years. And we will be collaborating with LAMS moving forward and possibly the Blue and White Society. Patty is also setting up a meeting with GPSA and CCSG leadership with Zach and Lexi to discuss how they can collaborate moving forward. A huge thank you to Director Bate for creating the graphics and the rest of the communications team for the alternative grade request tool. I would encourage everyone to continue sharing that so that people are educated on how they can change their grades. Also, Chair Barungi met with Chief of Staff Tremansky to discuss teams and how to better support reps and their team's usage moving forward. We also had a meeting this past week that was focused on talking about the role of the academic rep moving forward within AAC. If anyone has any questions, I would encourage you to reach out to either Representative Foley DeFourier or reaching out to Chair Barungi to talk about that because we made a lot of changes and there was like a lot of really good conversation surrounding that. Also, finally, Chair Barungi appointed Aaron Bose to the tuition task force, which will be meeting throughout the summer and the fall and maybe longer to reevaluate Penn State's current financial system, like as a result of COVID. And yeah, but if you have any questions, you can ask me, I guess, or just refer them to Chair Barungi.
Are there any questions for Vice Chair Gibbard? Chair, I'm going to assume that's for your report, Chair Jordan, but moving on, we'll go on to facilities. Chair Jordan.
Hi, everyone. Hope everybody's doing well. So thank you to everyone who signed up for 2-on-1s. Representative Gary and I had a really great week talking to all of you. Just stay on the lookout for a Teams message from me in the next few days, just so you guys can understand the next steps. We do not have committee this Sunday. We'll be having it the following Sunday, June 7th. So it's really important that you guys are looking in Teams for those important messages and reacting to them, as we really want you guys to do that more in our assembly. There's one more thing that was put out tonight in the facilities like channel files is the UPUA networking database that was shared with me last year. So reps, if you really want to get a head start and see who you can contact, it's on there. If you need any more help with that, let me know or Representative Gary know. I had a meeting this week to go over the possible implementation of providing meal vouchers on campus for students with food insecurities with Student Trustee Culler, President McKay, and GPSA. We're meeting with Anna Barone soon to talk over this initiative. I'm excited to see where this will go and how it will move forward in the future. The order ahead dining meetings are going super well. We had our first working group meeting for advertising yesterday, and I'm excited to work with this team to provide the student side of this program that hopefully will be coming soon. Just reach out to me if you have any more questions about anything. I'm around, and thank you all for working so hard.
Are there any questions for Chair Jordan? All right, seeing none, we'll now move on to Committee on Governmental Affairs. Chair Doherty, you could raise your hand. There you go.
All right, hey guys, so just to start off, I want to thank all of you who participated in the social media campaign for the primary push, and just reminding people to register for vote, register for absentee and mail-in ballots. I saw a lot of posts on Instagram, even some group meets I didn't realize that some of the reps shared with myself, so that's really cool, and I think we reached out to a lot of students that day, so please keep it up because we have another one coming up for the actual primary date to remind people to get out to vote. and or to make sure that they submit their absentee or mail-in ballots. So going forward, State College is going to be, Center County as a whole, we're moving into the green phase on this Friday. And so what that means is basically a lot of businesses are going to be open. Just like a list off real quick, bars and restaurants will be allowed to be at 50% capacity. Gyms, spas, salons, barbershops, theaters, and shopping malls also can open at 50% occupancy, though hair salons and barbershops must be by appointment only. My big thing with, I know a lot of people are coming back. I'm still in State College. I'm currently working in State College at a bar. One of the big things I would really recommend that if you do come down here, please respect what businesses have stated in order for you to enter the business, such as wearing a mask. We've already had issues with people coming and just thinking they can just walk into the business, and we don't know if they're from a county that may be in the red or if they've been in State College for the last 14 days. So it's kind of a nerve-wracking thing, especially for a lot of the workers. So just please make sure you're respecting that so everyone can stay safe and healthy. But going forward, thank you, Communications Director Bate, for the awesome graphics also, and for the future ones that we're going to be having soon. A little change to my report. We're actually going to be doing 2-on-2s tomorrow during committee, so be on the lookout for that. It should be fun, and we will have our special presentation from President McKay tomorrow to talk a little bit about the platform and just different directions we can go. But besides that, I will stand for questions.
Are there any questions for Chair Doherty? All right, seeing none, we'll now move on to Committee on Justice and Equity. Chair Rodriguez, if you could raise your hand. There you go.
Hey everyone, good evening. Hope I just woke you up if you were not already awoken. I just wanted to go through a few rundowns and I'll stop bothering you for the night. The first main component is I just wanted to bring massive attention to the fact that the first two pieces of legislation ever in Justice and Equity's short history, they have been passed. So congrats, milestone for everyone, yay, super fun. And great work on that too, on that note too. So obviously the Racial Justice Roundtable has passed. Please contact Representative Tolliver or myself if you're interested in joining to help push for the ideals of racial justice to be realized at a university level. Representative Tolliver will be chairing this, and media, basically the formulation of the advertising and the technicalities will be worked on immediately due to the passing. So just be on the lookout for that and contact him if you have any inquiries or interest in joining that. Representative Bowes has assembled a team to advance progress with the Women's Empowerment Table. So shout out to Representative Gibbard, Meter, Brown, Dalo, and Mishler. Thank you guys so much for joining this awesome cause, just to really empower women at the University Park campus and around. And Vice Chair Keller and I have begun the process of officializing outreach to various advocacy groups. If you do have a group that hasn't been initially recognized already, please talk to us so we can put that on our official list that we are formulating. And also, if anyone is interested in joining the COVID-19 roundtable, please contact me so I basically can get an approximate calculation of the representatives that would be interested, and I can create a formative list based on that where we can go forward with the technical aspects moving forward. And our next meeting will take place this Friday, May 29th at 5 p.m. Be there or be square and have a great rest of your Wednesday night.
Are there any questions for Chair Rodriguez? All right, seeing none, we'll now move on to Committee on Student Life. Oh, Chair Jordan?
Yeah, I'm gonna give Adeline's report tonight. That's okay. Hi again, everyone. So Adeline said, continue to sign up for initiative setup meetings. If you have not done so already, it's important that those take place before Friday. Project groups will begin to meet next week, so stay tuned for more on that. More important information will be coming soon. There's no committee tomorrow as important that I meet individually to get you set up on projects. And they stay tuned for the weekly update. I'm sorry I cannot be there with you in person this evening. Reach out with anything pressing if you need to do so. That's all from her.
If you have questions for Chair Mishler, just reach out to her individually as she's not here. And I believe Vice Chair DeLucia is also not here, so I will keep going forward. With that, we'll move on to comments for the good of the order. Only thing that I'm going to mention is for the reporters, I will be staying back after the assembly meeting for any clarifications or questions. I believe Director Abate will do so as well, but I'm putting that out there for them. Other than that, are there any comments for the good of the order? All right. I'm gonna give it a couple seconds. All right. So moving forward, Secretary, I'm gonna ask your preference. Would you like closing roll call, or would you rather take a quick screenshot of everyone here before everyone leaves? Let me know.
We can do the screenshot, just if everyone can give me like 30 seconds.
Okay, so meeting has not been adjourned. Please stay so that Secretary can just take a quick screenshot of those who are here. And just let me know when you're good.
All right, we're all set.
All right, meeting is adjourned at 10:18 p.m. Have a good night, everybody.